right, that's there. Roy is joining us. Let me. Thank you, sir. Okay. And what I'm finding is the weird thing about this is I actually have to open this through Drive because to use PowerPoint on this computer, it wants me to sign in and I try to sign in and it's a whole thing. So this is easier. Like you can see we had New Day, which I'm going to now delete. Just want to make sure I have enough. There we go. Going to do upload. All right. All right. I need to go back to my Zoom people. All righty. So. Yeah, worship got up early. Leon was playing and it's delightful. And people were chatting. What? And the Minalti, yes. The people are chatting and it's all good.
Just this
Okay.
I'm just making sure, like, I didn't misspell words.
I might have, whatever.
Right now.
Yeah.
I always think what it's supposed to be.
It's a forgiving group.
It is. My usual Sunday morning routine is to double check my sermon, but I've been doing the show, and so I got home after 11 last night, and so I knew that was happening. So yesterday afternoon was spent doing all the things that I normally do on Sunday morning, so I could get myself a little sleep. It was worse last week when there was an hour less.
Yeah. We're all feeling your pain.
We were all feeling it. And
Are you gonna stay here?
I am gonna stay here.
Okay.
Because I have nothing to do. Sometimes I work on next Sunday's service, but I'm not responsible for next Sunday's service. And I left my computer. So put everything in the bag. I hung it on the bed and I walked out the door with my clothes. That's good. And so I called my wife when I got here and I said, can you please open my computer and send the file to Carol? And that's why Carolyn handed me my manuscript in worship. I'm glad I did that on Sunday or yesterday afternoon, though. Ready to go. We had a great crowd last night, and Julie Taylor was able to come and get cancellation tickets. So if you know somebody who's like, oh, I wanted to go, but it's sold out. Well, she showed up at 7 p.m. like I told her to, and got in the cancellation line, and they were able to get tickets. So if you know somebody who's wanting to go, if you get there a half hour before curtain when the house opens, you can get in that cancellation line. I think sometimes, I don't know if they sell seasons, if people just have, and I know that, for instance, Ernie was telling me they had tickets, but then Jan had a blood pressure issue and had to go to the ER and they missed the performance.
I just want to get there in time for.
Yes. I think about that every time I pull up. I'm like, where do people park? And what makes me crazy is that gate to the expo parking is closed.
Yeah.
I'm like, come on.
I don't know what they're expecting out of it. And I was, wow.
Yeah, exactly.
Morning, baby.
Good morning.
Welcome back.
I like the breakfast, so I will say.
Welcome back, Grady. But your family was happy to have you home.
Yeah.
And by your family, I mean Kate.
She's still there.
She was still there when you got home.
At this point, that's my measure of success.
Oh, goodness.
We'll give it a couple more minutes.
Okay.
And then there'll be some trickle meeting, hopefully.
So Anna, I understand you're going to be teaching in April and May? Awesome. Very excited for that. Thank you.
I said, hey, you got a topic you'd like to talk about things that people think are in the Bible that aren't in the Bible. And goes, really? Okay.
Awesome. Fantastic. Yeah, I posted something to Facebook. I don't know if y'all saw it. There's, you know, that they have those Fathom events at the movie theater, you know, their special one-off. Well, I saw a film advertised called The Ark and the Darkness, which claimed to be a historically accurate film about the story of the Great Flood. And the graphic for the movie, I kid you not, includes an ark, lots of water, and the head of a dinosaur drowned in the water. I was like, oh, Lord, help me.
Good morning. Where's Claire?
And I don't think it was meant to be funny, but I found it hilarious.
I don't know, she's here. How do you know she's here? She and Alex walked in.
Clara? She might be down getting treats at the.
Oh, she probably is. She probably
Tea.
didn't chocolate. I brought her.
Hey, Lan. You're in the right place. Oh, that.
Oh.
Yeah.
So,
There you go.
I know that. Okay, it seems like it's time to start.
Yes.
I'd like to introduce John Bulten from East Central Ministries. As Matthew said in the early service, we all know them because that's where we get our plants for the plant sale. But there's a lot more to tell. And John put his contact information up here and the dates, 25 years. So John's going to introduce us to kind of how they started and then now what their interest is in housing in the international district.
Thank you very much. It's good to be here. This is not my birthday. Anymore. Yeah, thank you very much. East Central Ministries, we started in 1999 as an outreach of a little local church and kind of quickly adopted a community development model. So focused all these years, we focused on the international district, which is roughly, I mean, it's set as San Mateo to the west, Wyoming to the east, Lomas to the north, and basically the base in Gibson to the south. But we stretch, we're adaptable, but it's kind of the East Central corridor. So early on, we focused on, community development, just listening to felt needs, people and what they're experiencing in the community, and then kind of building programs and projects around people's dreams and hopes and desires. So that led us into some community gardening, which eventually shifted over to our greenhouses and growing awareness urban farm, youth tutoring, and we have a little youth preschool cooperative right now. We started a community health clinic. We had community health workers managing it, and then volunteer doctors and dentists coming in. Just this last year, we've passed that off, that. But so we started a housing cooperative with 13 families. That's kind of some of the base of where we are now, our foundational learning piece on housing. Oh, and over the years, we've done case management, and we have a little food cooperative that runs 5-6 days a week. So we use the word cooperative a lot. We build communal support and engagement and participation. So we've learned a lot of lessons over 25 years. And this last year, we really kind of hit a point of, some of our funding and some, we're saying COVID money, some contracts and stuff, all kind of came to an end. We realized for quite a while, we had kind of mission creep. We were trying to do a lot of things. It was harder and harder to hold it together in a common space. And we were tapped out of capacity to really kind of focus in on what we do well is to look at where the most pressing community need is and where there's gaps in it and others aren't addressing it in certain ways, kind of with the nuances. So we organized, reorganized. We've moved our clinic to the UNM Office of Health, who were always bringing their students, their med students and stuff. So they're taking ownership, and it's been a slow transition. We're still paying the lights and the phone bill and stuff. But yeah, that's opened up capacity for us to really kind of focus in on housing and the crisis of housing. And so, yeah, we're looking at it. Our vision is growing and expanding, but we're really looking at a redevelopment model of our neighborhood. Our city, county, state are all working on things, but what we've identified is, the system of what's happening is not adequately addressing the increasing needs and kind of the nuanced of the needs of people who are unsheltered or being, on the verge of being unsheltered because their rents are rising. They can't afford it. So we're looking at all these aspects, but one of the key pieces of it is community ownership. In the International District, up to about 85% of our housing stock is rental. And it's always been kind of the lower end rental. So it's people moving, they come in and then they find something else, or they have evictions or whatever. So we've had a very transient community, which has been hard to build kind of depth of leadership. If people are always on the verge and stress of where they're going to live, it's hard to show up to a neighborhood meeting or potluck meeting or invest in. We see it in schools, kids are bouncing in and out. And so for organization and a community wanting to do development and build deep roots, we have to address that. And so our housing strategy is really about redevelopment as well, and shaping our future. Otherwise, big developers will, and gentrification happens, which is, there's good aspects of that. You want smart, healthy redevelopment, but we don't want to displace our neighbors. We want our neighbors to have the agency and the self-determination as much as possible, which leads us to ownership. So we're looking for 25 years, building relationships, partnerships, working on, building capacity. So we're really organizing a lot. And there's so much community wisdom, depth, but it's scattered. And so we're trying to bring the voices together instead of one here and one there and everyone doing good work, but all scattered. And so it's really about, organizing people together, having a little more focused voice. So we've been doing for the last year and a half, just a monthly community potluck. It's sort of like, we're tired. We just get together and eat, and not like always be in the trenches. And then that immediately turned into like, we're organizers, we're strategists, we're activists, we're developers. Like, so we started with about 35, issues on the table. They're all big issues of food and housing and, education and kids and all of them. And we've really kind of focused in on housing and food sovereignty and access. The food, especially when Walmart went out, when they left 20 plus years ago, when they came, they pushed out John Brooks and other smaller grocery stores. And they gave 30, 60-day notice and they were gone, leaving a massive gap at Central and San Mateo. So pharmacy, kids' diapers, food. And then recently Walgreens right across the street was another pharmacy at San Mateo and Central. They left. We've had multiple smaller, even gas station stuff burn or boarded up. Not that we want people shopping at, gas stations, but if that's all they have to walk to, because they're transportation issues. So that really focuses in on food and food access, sovereignty. We've been talking about that for a long time. The International District Urban Agriculture Group supporting community gardens, school gardens. That's where our greenhouse plants often will get distributed to them, leftover ones. Yeah, so out of all of this, we started identifying vacant lots. So kind of the strategy started building around that. Probably. Yeah. So really about community ownership, creating new models of housing space and local jobs in our community, looking at small scale housing development as opposed to the big HUD money coming through to big developers, which really limit what can be done. We're looking at finding new models to address the issues now in our community. So identifying 225, 250 lots. There's some up there. It's vacant lots and boarded up buildings. So here's Central Avenue down here. Here's Wyoming right here on this one. East Central Ministries is here on Vermont. And then our clinic building here in Virginia. You can just see over here, just the groupings of them. Many of these have been boarded up vacant for years, or even the 25 years I've been in the neighborhood. And some of them, they become boarded up. People go in to find shelters, get a fire to stay warm, burn down, and then so it's a combination of all of them. This map is Central Avenue, and here's Louisiana, so the west side of La Mesa neighborhood. And so this is the fairgrounds on this side. So Central Avenue and the fairgrounds. The green here are two properties that we have just purchased. And the green up here is an open space little garden park that we developed 10 years ago. So you can kind of just see some of the pictures of it. And when I put them on maps, and I hope to have the rest of the neighborhood mapped out, I have an intern working on that. But people start to understand a little bit better where our neighborhood is. So our strategy is focused in the neighborhood, but it could be replicable elsewhere based on what's in the community and what are seen as blight, but how do we utilize them as assets? You can go to the next slide. Out of this, we're building strategy on this continuum of housing. And again, the city's strategy, we need more of everything. We're like 19,000 housing units short. A couple of years ago, it was, or last year it was 14,000. So they're building, I think 5,000 units were built last year, but we need more because people are getting priced out because of all the issues. But what we're finding is there are gaps in the continuum. So on the very lower end on the left, you know, tents, vehicles, couches, people sleeping in the street. Then you get some, the city's approach basically has been West Side Shelter or Gateway. Okay, keep doing it, but it's not enough. It's so many people don't go to the shelters. They can't, for a million reasons. There's a lot of transitional supportive programs on the lower end that are helping families, but then there's a gap before you get into the voucher system and the rental towards the top. I think there are 2,000 unused vouchers right now because landlords don't want to take vouchers. So they're being unused. So in between, you know, the county worked on tiny home village. Okay, I'm very supportive. We need 10 more tiny home villages, but let's do it smarter. Cost too much, it took too long. There were issues, but let's learn from that and try to adapt. But what we're proposing to the city and to others is a site and service. People don't want to use the word safe encampment or tent village or whatever. We need it. Lunch with the mayor a month ago, we sat on our vacant lot on the table and had lunch and said, you know, Gateway and West Side Shelter and all the programs, okay, we need all of it, but we will not get people off the street unless we have to create safe places for them, where there's restrooms, where there's water, where people can at least be safe. Right now, the police and what waste management are sweeping every single day. And they'll take people's stuff and they'll toss it in the dump truck and off it goes. And it's family pictures. Someone lost a small urn with remains of a family member. And it's happening all the time. So people are living on the street with just the anxiety. You're not sleeping because of sounds, the fear of danger. And every few days, the city sweeping. It's not a strategy. It's trying to deal with something without looking at a larger vision of what can be and what should be. But there's a lot of pushback on that. So what we're asking for is the zoning overlay on the international district. Let's not worry the rest of the city. It was hard enough to get casitas in. They want to now propose, you know, single family lots having duplexes. We don't think that will work. We're asking to allow the city to give our neighborhood options and flexibility for housing. And so there's some movement on that, but on that lower end of the left, we wanted to do more experimental housing on these smaller vacant lots. And then you get into the middle with all the rental. And that's usually where the big affordable housing development comes from. Talk to Miriam Hicks at Greater Albuquerque Housing Partnership, which is now Soul Housing. She said they have to use kind of HUD money and the tax credits because the scale of what they do, you know, they have to build larger developments. So you see every 5 years or something, a big, large development and it's affordable housing, which sometimes it is and sometimes it's not. But it costs her, she said, $275,000 to build one rental room, and then another, and another. $275,000. The average house of a single family home in Albuquerque is like $325,000. So you can see we need more of it, but the way the system is set up, only the bigger developers, and it costs so much money. We could do a lot more, but they can't do small development on single family lots, infill. We can. We as a community can. So we're saying we need more of all of it, but there's a huge gap between rental and home ownership. And this is the gap that historically African American, Native American, people of color have been left out of that system for all the reasons. So how do we fill some of those gaps? And we're talking about cooperative housing. So people, that's what we started 16 years ago. It's more of a joint communal. And so it's not one person having all the risk of home ownership. So as a cooperative, people build equity. The families that have been in our co-op for the 16 years, their payment is $650 and they're building equity. They're up to almost $20,000 in equity. They could pull that out and go buy a house or put a down payment on. So we're looking at those different gaps as a continuum of housing. We're encouraging the city to say, paint a bigger strategy. Don't just piecemeal some stuff. That's not a solution. Paint a big strategy and let our community help solve the issues. Next slide.
Can I have a question about cooperative housing? Is that when multiple families live in the same house and they own a percentage of it? Is that how it works?
You could look at it, it could be structured in many different ways. I mean, that would be kind of a shared common space with that. For ours, we bought a property that had 21 bedroom apartments and 2 houses. And the original was $50 down in sweat equity. So we made them larger. So everyone has their own home and they're separated, but they're all on one property. You could do multiple properties. You can structure it any way. It's really about the financing piece of it. You don't have to go to a bank and borrow money by yourself. We do kind of group financing. So it shares the risk of it together. This is just one more kind of like gateway council. Just again, talking about the continuum of housing on the lower end, especially at the bottom left, you can see it. I think 83% of the people on the lower end have a cost burden of housing. The HUD and federal government says 30% is affordable for what you pay for your housing. So at the lower end, 83% are spending more than 30%. And it just leads to like the instability of housing. And so next slide. Yeah, we're taking this bigger picture. East Central Ministries is taking the lead in, but we're really looking at kind of in the middle, new housing models again. How do we do smaller development on smaller lots, quicker, faster, less expensive? On the top right, Penny Land Trust. So this is the exciting thing that just kind of keeps emerging. Because again, we want a holistic vision of this and not just one organization doing some good projects. We have enough of that. So this is Community Land Trust is a nonprofit stewards land for long-term affordability. And most of the time they're around affordable housing, but they could be for green space or agriculture or whatever too, whatever is needed by the community. So we are starting a new community land trust for the International District in the Southeast Heights. And then we're looking at different financing models. So on the ECM side, we're looking at kind of starting an investment fund. We funded Casa Shalom, our housing co-op 17 years ago, because a bank wouldn't lend us money. We didn't have the capacity to do, state money and all of that. So we had private investors lend us money at low interest, and we've been able to pay them back. So I'm talking to Albuquerque Community Foundation about an investment fund that community members can put in some money at low interest, but it's going towards solutions in our community. On the right side, the financing, the public and private. So let's go to the next slide. Oh, here's just, yeah, kind of some of the model that, we're kind of looking at different, what people are doing around the country. So community land trust, owning the land. And again, Sawmill, just north of Old Town is a community land trust. So the community owns the land, and then what gets built up, we're saying, hey, let's maybe it's a cooperative that is building housing. So there's ownership at this level. But developers could build on a land trust. I've talked to Habitat for Humanity. They could build, people could build up, and then there are lease agreements and stuff, but it stays long-term affordable because the land trust is setting kind of the gauge on it. So here's, yeah, kind of where we're going. So we're playing with different models, but so ECM kind of on the left side this has really been kind of chewing, stirring, and birthing here. We're developing this plan that keeps emerging and growing. The funding totally did not go through the right process for capital outlay money, because literally by January 1st, 17 years ago, I went to the state roundhouse and we got capital outlay money to the county, and they bought a building and renovated it for our clinic. And we have a long-term lease and we get it rent free. It's a good system for certain projects. I had no interest in it, but I got talked into, let's just put in a request. So we asked for $2 million to acquire vacant lots and boarded up buildings on the East Central corridor. Our senator, Mimi Stewart, who happens to be the president of the Senate, got really excited about it. She's been wanting to look at green space and kind of shade cover in the neighborhood for a long time. So incorporating housing and green space. And then a couple of our representative, Janelle Anayanyu, who's brand new. This is just her second term, got excited. And Commissioner Barboa with the county. So we started getting some political support around this. I took some neighbors, we went walking around because we don't have a lobbyist to lobby our request. So we went up ourselves, and the politicians took us in and got us indoors, and other lobbyists got us indoors. At the end of the day, we secured, and the governor just signed the bill, it's all set, $1.53 million from 12 legislators, which is to God right there. So that money will go to the county because it can't go directly to a nonprofit. In the meantime, we got some interest from the governor's office. So we were invited to a meeting and then to present a request for a separate pot of money that the governor. And so they gave us $2 million. So now we're at $3.53 million with a community land trust that hasn't even started yet. Yeah. So through a lot of our potluck groups and organizing, we have brought together a core group who said we will meet weekly to get this community land trust going, incorporated as a nonprofit, focusing on what are the community values and stuff. So we've got a group meeting every week, and now they're splitting off into subgroups of real estate and stuff. Meanwhile, it was going too fast, especially the governor's money. For whatever reason, there's a requirement it needs to be spent by June 30. And again, this money has to go to the county. County real estate then has to buy property by June 30, and property that we as a community are identifying. So we said, let's just take a deep breath. Next slide, please. So we're kind of moving down the road here. Oh,
Did I go too far?
I probably put a picture in, but here's kind of a picture of where we're going. Kind of how do we do smaller development in more village type? So there's communal support around each other. Do green space kind of in the middle. Next picture. Yeah. So our roadmap goes on. So what we've decided is East Central Ministries will incubate this community land trust. They're kind of on the left. And taking the pressure off to quickly get this thing going. We have been meeting with the county officials to make sure their process goes well, because there could always be some hiccups. And so we brought community members basically to their staff meeting to say, we expect this money, especially the governor's money, but even the other capital outlay money, to go through this process. We identify the properties, county real estate buy them, and then transfer ownership of these properties to East Central Ministries as we incubate a larger community land trust. Then we get into the anti-donation, because that's why this capital outlay money can't come to a nonprofit. There's anti-donation clauses, which is 100 and some year old law, and it probably was good for some reason, but it causes havoc for nonprofits because it's hard to, everything has to be worked in through a local government. But there's an Affordable Housing Act that New Mexico passed back in 2015 that talks about you can transfer assets to a nonprofit for affordable housing. But it hasn't been used much or hardly at all. So the lawyers are now figuring out, yes, okay, we can constitutionally do that. How do we do it?
Okay.
But by showing up with a bunch of community members to the county, we got, how can we do it, as opposed to, no, we can't.
Right.
And we believe it's because community members were there saying, this is what we expect. It changed the tone of that meeting. This was just Friday morning. Yeah, so we expect the county to buy properties that we've identified, transfer them over to East Central Ministries. We're building our capacity to manage more and really changing even our bylaws to reflect land trust, the language. As we incubate this larger land trust, community land trust. Ideally, as we move forward, then maybe as the community land trust incorporates and builds capacity, we move down the road. I envision East Central Ministries staying pretty small and nimble. We are acquiring some lots, but I'm saying we can be kind of the research and development of a larger land trust. So we can go in and maybe try building smaller units, pushing the limit, seeing how far until we hit barriers of zoning or whatever. And then the land trust learning where we have to put pressure, what we have to do, politically and communally to make sure that this process goes well. So we told the mayor, we as neighbors will go to the community association meetings. And when a city official shows up to the neighborhood meetings and says, we want to do this. They're, rightfully so, city officials get a little anxious about neighborhoods because there's a lot of things going on and there's a lot of pushback. We're saying we want to go as neighbors and say, this is what we're working on in our neighborhood for our solutions. Will you and your city councilors support us doing this? Let's try new models. Let's evaluate them and let's see if that can be spread in the rest of the city. Because we have some real issues that have to be solved. Yes. Yeah. You have a question?
So is affordable housing a legal term, and what does it actually mean?
Marjorie coming with the heat.
It's not a legal term. And I think it generally means kind of what HUD standard is, 30% of somebody's income is affordable. If it's 30% towards housing is affordable. Anything over that is not affordable for somebody. So if you're making $100 a month, 33% is affordable. What I'm finding out, it was completely subjective. you know, HUD just, I think back in the 70s, just said, this is the number. It doesn't include childcare, transportation, you know, a death in the family, all the other things that all of us experience, and especially people who are vulnerable experience even more. So is 30% affordable? For some of us, it is. Of their income.
Somebody else's.
Yeah, of their income. Yep. And so that's how they're, you know, you go in to get a voucher or something, what's your income? Okay, this is what 30% will be.
And that's why I find something.
And then you have to try to find something. And landlords, you know, will they even work with you on that? Or, and we're trying to build partnerships and build our capacity to offer at all these levels. There's committee members who want to solve issues, not experts in all of it, but we've got a lot of wisdom in the community. Yeah.
So in those houses that you show, so do they include bathrooms and kitchens? Because some models that they were doing didn't include that.
Yeah. Tiny Home Village does not, and that's over right in our neighborhood, Texas and Zuni, just about 4 blocks from where I live and 3 blocks the other direction from where I work. They are 120 square foot with a bed, you know, some cabinets and a table. And then there's community bathrooms and a community kitchen. And one of the problems with Tiny Home Village is the county did not describe what they were going to do real well up front to the rest of it. So, you know, especially with shared kitchen and, you know, cutting knives, you can't just pull the first 50 people out of tents and put them in and fill up the Tiny Home Village. They should have had a better strategy and a better message, because after a while, when the Tiny Home Village isn't full and you have people sleeping in tents outside, the Journal and everyone got all upset. They could have described what that should have been, and it should have been a better process. Hey, maybe these 5, you know, group homes or recovery centers, when somebody's graduating, maybe then they come to the Tiny Home Village and then they go to something else. And that's kind of continuing. Can we connect the programs better as opposed to just y'all come, and then the city, you know, us as the community saying, well, why isn't it full? We have a problem. Like, there's a messaging issue, there's a coordination issue. So those do not have, they have heat, but not running water or sewer. Anything is possible.
So in going forward, are you still envisioning that the homes will be for 1 or 2 people, or will they be for somebody with a family? Will they have plumbing and kitchens? And
Yeah, I have my ideas. We're asking community, what do we need? Is it for larger families? Is it for single people? Are we trying to deal with those in tents or those being evicted? We're working on all of those, and we're not quite there yet. I personally live in a renovated Airstream and have 2 little vintage trailers that we built out and a bus with it next to our greenhouse. And I live a block off of Central, right in the middle of the neighborhood. I want to renovate school buses and make them beautiful with lights and things. Let's make beautiful communities out of that. That's not what all the rest of the community wants. So, but I can do it for $10,000. We can buy a school bus, a minibus for $3,500 down in Los Lunas right now. Bunch of us get together and renovate it, and that could be a home for somebody. So it's not for everybody, but we're trying to find the gaps in how to do things quicker and faster, hire local people to do some of this, and can we do it that fit multiple, you know, for some it'll be single people with a dog or a couple. We'll have to do something different for larger families that are getting evicted. We're not quite at the development stage. Like stage 1 is how do we just acquire land? Then we'll move to like our capacity of who should develop. Maybe Habitat for Humanity is building on some lots, or somebody else.
So what are you doing about mental health though for your clientele? Because after you've been on the street, you're changed.
Yeah,
And
absolutely, absolutely. And that is a major, some of it, housing first is a good strategy of just get people in the house, let them feel safe with a locked door and a bookshelf. And then bring support structures, community around them, and professionals. So really partnering, we can't do everything. So let's focus on what we do well. But hey, city, fund these groups that are doing case management well, and we're going to connect them to the case management here with people in the housing here. So we're looking at different strategies, but it's also phase 2, because we know all of that has to be thought through, developed, partnerships, strengthened before we launch into it. And again, learning from Tiny Home Village, we can build it, but was there a good strategy for the supportive structure for families and people once people move in? And we have to learn, like, all of that has to be worked through simultaneously once you start building and putting people in. You can't be building the plane after you've taken off.
so
I have a question. Does your community, do the neighbors even speak to each other?
You know,
I mean, I'm finding that people drive into their garage, shut the garage door, and you never see them again. And I live in a neighborhood where we're friendly. So I can imagine what it's like.
yeah. You know, the International District has like 15,000 households, and people are moving a lot because it's rental. So it's hard to get to know our neighbor. In general, it is, right? But when people are moving in and out, I've been there a long time. I get burned out of trying to get to know my neighbor, because a few months later, they may be gone. And then I feel
worth the effort.
yeah. So we're working on that, this monthly pop. We do other events to do that. We do a lot of door knocking, trying to get to know, talk to, inform, bring people together. Like everywhere, it's a struggle. The beautiful part of our neighborhood, though, is like people are all over the place. They're on the streets, they're walking. For some, it's a little bit like, let me shut my door. But there are very few garages in our neighborhood. So people are walking to the bus stop, or they have to park on the street. And so there's some engagement there. But we're in a polarized time, and there's a lot of fear. And we're working to build community that reduces some of the fear. Going back, like, how do people heal? So much of mental health is when you're not sleeping and you're in constant high alert of danger. All of our mental health is going to be bad. And all of us will be using substances to kind of
That's how complex the trauma works.
try to calm that.
When you're continually in that heightened state, your physical, your system just runs out. It's shot.
Does that UNM clinic, excuse me, okay, does the UNM clinic there offer mental health services?
When there are volunteer resources for them. Mhm.
Does that clinic work at all in conjunction with healthcare for the homeless? I mean, they're located down here. How far does healthcare for the homeless reach? I mean, because they're pretty well resourced.
Yeah, and they will do some outreach, but their main hub is here. And a lot of the community members won't come on down here for those services. So they'll go maybe to First Nations over on Zuni,
Okay.
who have some. And we try to connect and partner and all the rest. So yeah, our clinic, which we've now spun off, really has focused on, again, 16, 17 years ago when we started, the main need was, Spanish-speaking undocumented immigrants having access to healthcare. And that's where we started our clinic. And that's historically where we've still stayed, not accepting insurance because people didn't have it. So can we open up the access for primary care to those that didn't have access? And so we're spinning that off so they will still focus on really that piece of it, less so than healthcare for homeless people. But we're encouraging, I want a team of triage doctors in golf carts going around to the neighborhood. Like, let's go to people instead of expecting people to go to the thing. We have to think different. Oh, you were first, yeah.
Are you with the Pay for Hope in San Antonio?
No,
Right now, I'm a part of in Jamaica, Queens, I'm on a board for the Pure Life Partnership. And what we've been finding in our downtown area is that the development is the deliberate destruction of community neighborhoods. They're building these high rises and no community space. So places where people gathered are being displaced. And people like in our church who lived in a house for 25, 30, 50 years now have these humongous developments on the side of them. And it's like, so when we started, we were inspired by Pay for Hope in San Antonio, which their whole goal was, how do we help people who are being demonized because they are homeless?
yeah,
And what they did was they looked throughout the country for best practices. And God bless the mayor of San Antonio and their people, because they really, really wanted to solve it. And so what you were describing about the failure of that tiny village is like, look, first we get to know where are the people who are like sheltering under the bridges. And then they say, well, what we need is, can we develop relationships with them and develop a safe space? So they choose not to shelter there, but they choose to shelter in this place. And then they develop relationships with them. Like, well, who here is ready even to move from the street to a dormitory style place?
Yeah.
And then they develop that to now they're ready to have their own apartment. And in conjunction with that, what happened was then all the agencies that offered dental, health, mental, said, well, now here's the piece of, and so they started with like 25 partnerships, and I think now they're up to 105. And they've now, maybe a few years ago, built an apartment for homeless families. So it's like they had a big, like, how do you grow progressively to where you want to be? Because no one is going to be where you want them to be. You got to meet them where they are. And so when we started our building in Jamaica, the anchor institutions were being pushed out. And so First Church was built in, First Presbyterian Church was founded in 1662. So we were over there, everybody. But the other churches in the area had community, and it's like, they don't care about the neighborhood. So we partnered with the Queens Public Library, a community health clinic, a community health network, and a senior citizens to make it intergenerational outreach. And so building affordable, affordable. Well, we built 174 units before. And then the services are for the whole community. And so we're using that to like offset developers who are just coming in and building these high rises and want people just to come in, go to work, come in, go to work, and don't, not kill the community.
and the system is the same all over. Maybe intentionally doing some of this, but the strategy has to come up from each community based on what we have and so yes, others are doing phenomenal stuff. We want to learn and then adapt what we have and can do from here grassroots, but it's the same.
Yeah.
How does the community not get displaced? We don't want to lose the unsheltered folks. We want solutions and safe homes for We don't want to push them out to the west side shelter. We want to create agency and strength here and heal people together. I need it. We all need it. We need community. So we're developing it through a strategy of infill lots, basically. And how can we change the system? So, yeah.
Yeah, I'm curious, I was at a Rotary Club meeting where you Chief Indiana spoke, it was the day after this.
Mhm.
I'm curious what y'all's relationship with the is. It's tension or if it's help. He had some opinions about like, Pennsylvania Central, but you know,
Yeah.
Are they external and you're kind of building up or partners in this?
We used to see them as partners.
Okay.
Right now it's fraught.
Okay.
And we were talking about this in our potluck meeting yesterday. I don't blame the cops or the sanitation guys that are told to clean out the sidewalks. We don't have a strategy. And Adams Market at Pennsylvania in Central, that and probably the McDonald's at Wyoming in Central have made the La Mesa neighborhood just north of Central, where I work and live on the other side of the street of, the second most dangerous neighborhood in the city, because of so many instances there. But we're trying to fix it by this wrong approach because there's not a strategy of how to use the money and create solutions so people aren't building bonfires and gathering because they have nowhere else to go. So that corner is where everyone gathers and things happen. And historically, that's been troubled corner for a long time with Pussycat on one side, Adams Market, which used to be Circle K on the other side. And I live 3 blocks from there. So, but it's not the cops' problem. And it's really not, I'm not going to blame the people who are just trying to like find some place to be. We need a strategy of where can people go? And if we can't build houses, let's create safe tent encampments. Let's do some creative stuff that bring people together and give them their basic needs and allow the next steps of solutions. But if the city isn't going to allow it, people are going to gather where they can gather.
That's great attention.
Yeah. Because the city solution then, well, let's just clean them up. Why don't they go to the shelters? Well, they're not going to go to the shelters. People lose their stuff and they get raped at the shelters and all those things. And bad things will happen other places too, but it doesn't mean we can't have big solutions. So we need pressure on Tim Keller to say, we will cover you from all the neighborhoods that want to get rid of everybody. If you're helping create solutions, or just get out of the way and let us do it. We're going to do this. That's basically what we're telling you. So I don't even know where the rest of my slide. Maybe there's oh yeah. Oh yeah, we bought one property in Chalma, just north of Central.
And that's the end of your slides.
Yeah. And then the land trust, literally the prioritized ones for the governor's money and stuff. We're excited, we're moving. It's a long-term strategy. We're trying to like take ourselves.
I have a question.
Yeah.
The report that's coming out, it just came out, I forgot the gentleman's name, he's like senior volunteer advisor to the mayor, Ely maybe.
Damon, yeah.
I don't know if you've seen his draft report.
Oh,
I'm sure
he
you
and I have
recall.
been talking. I've
sure you
driven
recall.
him around. He was like, I cannot put safe encampment in our report because
Yeah.
we'll get sued. I've showed him properties that we could do this. And now he's modifying the report again. And we have a meeting sometime next week.
Yeah, he said he was gonna publish it to the city council. Anyway, I was curious your thoughts on the draft. If he's hitting the right points, I heard.
Oh. Well, his draft was terrible the first time around. Basically, he's like, I'm a lawyer, we're just gonna get sued, so we have to like, what? He wants to put tons more money at the West Side Shelter and tons more money at Gateway and a few other things. Okay. Let's get to real solutions. And he was like, oh, okay. So he's excited about it, but at the end of the day, will that report do anything for changing the city administration to dream bigger?
Okay.
We're
Curious.
If you
Yeah,
start
it's-
looking at it, it's not a problem. It's like, you know, what we're bringing back to Jamaica, like things that I grew up when I was a kid in the sixties, like tenant controls and block association, and, you know, there's places where people meet, you know, but it's like, you know, when you're fighting hard against the city, that it's just about the dollar, you know, and like, we have all these things beyond. But it's like, you really have to be in it to fight. You gotta fight for it.
You know, and we do.
Mhm.
And we as a community have to think differently, that this is not a problem. Just get them out of the way. These are people. And, you know, more times than not, it's, wow, my property value. Yeah, I understand people's property value. But as property value goes up here, it displaces people down here. The whole system is connected. We all want good investments and property values, but if we don't share the responsibility, I just want my property value here, it raises rent here and people become unsheltered here. So it's connected, and we need to be talking about how do we create a healthier community together? Because this is our city. We all belong here, and just trying to move them out to some other city as they're trying to move them to our city. We're trying to shove them into something when they're traumatized. But addiction and mental health mostly is, there's biological, but it's also created by situations that we've neglected.
And people think that could be you tomorrow. You're one paycheck away. You have a health crisis. You're one paycheck away from street. Absolutely.
And a white man like me who had, you know, I had a stable family. I have networks that can cover me. I have the infrastructure because I was born a white man in that system. So many other people don't. And there's a racial, gender divide there. And it's perpetuated, and our system is kind of built on it. And so as a white man, I have a responsibility to challenge the system, listen to my community, because I don't have all the solutions.
The people that live in your area are non-English speaking. What are the main languages?
A couple years ago, Van Buren Middle School had like 37 languages spoken. Predominantly Spanish speaking, when, you know, in the other than English. But it's because of the low income, you know, rental, it's a place where refugees are coming, and, you know, some of the asylum seekers that Catholic Charities or Lutheran Services bring in. We're the international district. We want to celebrate that and say there's great capacity and you know, wisdom and beauty in that. But we don't want to displace people. We want to make everyone feel like they belong, but be safe, and yeah.
John, can you go over the boundaries of the international district?
Yeah, I should have. Of that. So San Mateo's on the west end. On the east end is Wyoming, but it really should stretch out almost to,
So.
okay. And then Lomas,
Okay.
so is on the north end, and it really runs up to Gibson or the base. And that was just kind of, you know, Tim Keller was our state senator. when that went through and we were shifting the name to really identify it's something where people want to live, the International District. And so Tim has stake in our neighborhood. And a lot of us are like, come on back to your roots, man. Get to it. Like, we're holding him accountable for that. I don't care about his next election. I care about our community now. And if you want to get reelected, show some courage and we'll support you. We'll cover you in that. But we need to do some big things. We can't just throw money around on projects and think that it's a solution. We're throwing a lot of money. So can we help government use the monies wiser and smarter?
Yes.
But then we have to think smaller too. We can't just do big stuff. And neighborhood associations want to hold on to property values. No, people, it's not healthy for anybody to have people living in tents. It's not healthy for the people living in tents or homeowners. Like, we have common reason to work together. We have to think different about
In Maui, East Central, they're using the land trust to protect the people who live there from developers. You know, so, you know, we need to keep the land here so that it's affordable when you're able to come back. Because they're like buzzing, like they're gonna develop it and nobody's gonna be able to afford to live.
And that's why our stage one of our strategy, how much land can we buy and bank it? And then get into what are we building and how and the support structures of, we need to bank land because people are buying it up and it's just gone. So other conversations, I'd love to talk to First Presbyterian about investment funds and ways you guys can like help buy certain properties or whatever you want to do. But it's a big thing. And you guys are a deep church. Been here a long time, and I know you've been working on a lot of these issues. We need everyone together.
Thank you. Very good.
But some of, you know, just kind of continuing on housing and some of the strategies. Yeah. If anyone's interested in these.
We ever eaten in Copper Canyon, one of our favorite.
Over in Gibson? Yeah, yeah.
But I just stayed there Friday, and I said to my husband, where did they put the fence on?
We've built a lot more fences, a lot more walls in our neighborhood. We always had a lot of it last number of years. I mean, people were scared. It's like we're working on reducing the fear in neighbors all the way around. I want to go to Washington Law. Bring them on last Friday, we were down on Central. It was somewhere along in there. We had trouble getting in just delivering posts. The kids were calling us from school on Friday. And I don't know why. It took us 30 minutes to get just to deliver 3 boxes of food. And because there was no room. And for those families, you know, there are parents that are trying to work minimum wage jobs and they're not going to take day off to take care of the kids. And all of these things have such weight on families. It does a lot.
Well, some of the things, there was a survey online for APS when they were setting up their schedule last year. And so that's one of the big things, they need days off, teachers to plan. What do you call it, but the school needs to provide daycare. If classes are in session, the school needs to have a program side by side that provides activities.
I think that my grandson last Wednesday We will not physically go back to school until the second of the week. And the grandparents, you know, the grandparents in that line. Just.
There was a big outcry about this year's APS schedule, so they've changed it next year. There's fewer long periods of time without school. But you can go on the APS website and look for surveys. They're doing one now for budget. And like John was saying, it all works together. If the kids aren't in school, they're not getting food. And all of that, you know, so, and the parents can't go to work, so.
I've got you on my phone.
And school to provide not just education and socialization, but nutrition, childcare.
And are those schools in the city and the county, are they working together on that? Does community centers play some of that role or?
But then also transportation's an issue. Remember we had the community, what is it called at Longfellow? There's the 3 downtown
Yeah,
schools,
yeah,
the community, family community
community school.
project. It's awesome that the kids can go to Wells Community Center before school, but they have no way to get them over to Longfellow to start school. You know, so if the parents have to be to work before school starts and they drop their kids off at Wells Park, they can't get to school. So it's like, what, do we volunteer and walk kids over there?
Walking school bus.
These are huge issues.
So there was one close. Layout with, did you recognize that?
Yeah, we can.
That restaurant.
I never know if.
I know. There we go.
Thank you.
It will pay. Oh, it's
Yeah.
missing. Okay, he's gone.
And then how is that community